All right, guys, we made it. Week 1 in the National Football League. The real football starts now. We'll have the Houston Texans going up against the Baltimore Ravens in Week 1. No more preseason, no more roster cuts, no more analyzing about who we think is going to perform. It's just go on the field and perform. Welcome to the Ravens Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku, and today we'll dive deep into what we believe is going to happen with this season, what our predictions as far as players are concerned, predictions about how the team will perform as a record, the roster, things of that nature. We'll also have Mark Lane, who's a sports writer for USA Today via Texans Wire, join us and talk all about what the Texans ever believe are going to happen as far as their season is concerned and how they look to overtake a huge task against these Baltimore Ravens. But first, it's prediction time. We are here. It is time to decide once and for all what we believe is going to happen this season. There are a lot of question marks surrounding this team, and deservedly so. There's some fans who may think one way or another, but we'll break it all down here right now. The Ravens on offense, they look potent on paper. We haven't seen this team perform on preseason football. Lamar Jackson didn't play the entire preseason. Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman. We got a little bit of Zay Flowers in there. J.K. Dobbins, we know, was holding in with the Ravens during training camp, so we didn't see much of him. No Mark Andrews. Offensive line, half of the offensive linemen, at least the starters that we know were going to be there, didn't show up during preseason. So there are a lot of question marks regarding what we expect to see from this offense. But I'm sold. Based on what we've seen from Todd Monken in the preseason, maybe not schematically, but just having those receivers on the field, we can tell early on that there's going to be a lot of 2 and 3 receiver sets showing up, more 3 than 2, hopefully. We're going to see lots and lots of different looks from these dynamic playmakers for the Ravens. So my hopes are high for the offense. On the defensive side now, not a lot of change. There's a little bit of change. I mean, Marcus Peters is gone, so we don't have him to deal with as far as him attacking the football, being a ball hawk corner. But they did bring in Rocket Sim to supplement Marlon Humphrey whenever he returns. And we got a lot of guys coming back. Marcus Williams, who was injured halfway through the season, came back later on, but we didn't see a lot of him, so expect to see him perform. Kyle Hamilton, his second year in the league. We don't know how he's going to come back in sophomore season. So a lot of question marks on the defense. Not as high on the defense as I am on the offense, but I still expect big things. But let's dive deep. Let's go very, very minuscule. Use the microscope and dive into who we think is going to perform and who we think may not. I'm going to go with the Offensive Rookie of the Year for this team. It's a no-brainer. If you've listened to this show from week 1, you know who I believe is going to be a huge playmaker for the Ravens. That's Zay Flowers. Loved what I saw from him in preseason. I've talked to lots of writers and beat writers in camp for the Ravens, and they have nothing but high things to say about his performance during camp. I know he's a rookie, but I expect him to develop into a serious playmaker for the Ravens, maybe as early as week 3, week 4. They might have some packages in them for him already, a la what they did with Marcus Brown during his first year with the Ravens. So very, very, very high on Zay Flowers, expecting him to be Rookie of the Year. Comeback Player of the Year, another no-brainer. In the receiver room, Odell Beckham Jr., who tore his ACL. We haven't seen him since the Super Bowl with the Los Angeles Rams, but he's going to come back, and he has to make an impact this season. I mean, his wallet is counting on it. We talked to Brian McFarland with the Russell Street Report, who mentioned that there's void years after this season. Even though he signed that 1-year deal, his impact will be felt on the Ravens roster regardless if he's on the field or not next season because of those void years. So if he wants to stay with the Ravens, he's going to have to put up big numbers. He's going to have to be that presence, that veteran presence in the locker room, that receiver room, as Mark Clayton, another player we had on the show, is very young. And they're a young group. And Odell Beckham can make his presence felt and really teach these young guys how to be a pro both in and out of the football field. So I expect him to do very well. It'll be very interesting to see how he performs with Rashad Bateman, another guy who I'm high on. But as far as comebacks go, there's no better comeback story than coming back from 2 ACL tears, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. We're moving on to what we expect. Good things or bad. Things that I'm looking forward to, I mentioned it already, the offense. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Todd Monken in particular uses his pieces. Lamar Jackson hasn't had a spread offense, spreading his offense wide open so that he can have those running lanes and passing lanes since his days in Louisville. So I'm sure Todd Monken will look at that and try and implement that type of offense into this system. Don't be surprised if you see some Greg Roman type plays. I've heard a little something, one or two things from beat writers, which I won't really get into who said it, but I've heard that there's some wrinkles going on. You don't be surprised you see some read options still. There'll still be one or two plays in which you'll see very similar schematics as it pertains to what went down a couple of years ago with Greg Roman. And that's fine. You want to see this team be multifaceted, beat you on the run, beat you in the pass. Just don't want to sling it nonstop, which I do believe Monken will do. Don't get me wrong. I feel like this would be a passing team when it's all said and done. But don't be surprised you see some wrinkles using Lamar Jackson's legs a little more than you think, at least in the early goings, especially against defenses who have struggles stopping the run, something we'll talk about a little later on in this show. Things that I'm not looking forward to. The depth at corner. We've talked about it a little bit. Rocketson has been brought in. You got Marlon Humphrey, who's dealing with the foot injury. Who knows if he'll be back for week 1? All signs point to no, but we'll see as the week progresses. But there are some serious depth concerns, at least early on, for this Ravens team. There are players who are going to come in, JAD, Arthur Mallette, who we see here, come in and try and supplement the damage that is loss of Marlon Humphrey. But I don't know. It's just something about this corner team, this corner room that has me a little bit concerned. Now, the Ravens have been here before. Like, the Ravens are known to have secondary depth, but if you really think about it going back, besides Marcus Peters' addition, there hasn't really been 2 or 3 strong corners on this team very often, at least for the long stretch. Injuries, roster development, what have you. The Ravens have done a great job of camouflaging that by having great great safety help, and also pressuring the quarterback by bringing 5 or 6 guys at the quarterback. So expect that early on. Expect a lot of blitzes, especially with the young quarterbacks, wink, wink, to try and, camouflage the depth concerns that are at corner right now, especially with Marlon Humphrey likely not playing in week 1. Moving on. Let's get right to it. Let's talk about it. How are the Ravens going to do in the AFC North? You got the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I'm very high on. Do not sleep on the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys. Don't do it. It's a mistake that'll cost you. Mike Tomlin is one of the greatest coaches in the NFL right now. My favorite head coach, period, end of story. And he has those boys ready to play every single week. Kenny Pickett, I expect to make a huge leap forward. Their receivers in George Pickens, who seem to make plays on pretty much a weekly basis, especially in preseason. You saw it in action. They have Najee Harris coming back. That defense is there, and they're loud and they're angry. And do not doubt the Steelers making an impact, and really, when it's all said and done, possibly changing the landscape of the AFC North as far as standings are concerned. The Browns are another question mark. Now, everyone likes to bag on the Browns, and I get it. The Browns are the Browns. But they do have Deshaun Watson, and whatever you think about what he's done off the field, as far as I'm concerned, what he's done in the field has been pretty impressive. Maybe not enough to give this man fully guaranteed money, but enough to make some noise in the AFC North. So don't sleep on the AFC North as it pertains to the Cleveland Browns. They do have Nick Chubb coming back, who's a huge difference maker as far as running backs are concerned. And if the Ravens aren't careful, if they don't have the rush defense to stop guys like Nick Chubb, it could be a long season for them. The Cincinnati Bengals, look, they speak for themselves, okay? They were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They have Joe Burrow. They have the 3 best wide receivers as far as combinations are concerned in the National Football League. I don't think you can really speak to a better 3-receiver set than what we have with the Cincinnati Bengals with T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and, of course, Jamar Chase. That team is going to be potent. That team is going to make a lot of noise. But I tell you what, for my money, I really like what I see from the Baltimore Ravens. And a couple of reasons why I am putting the Baltimore Ravens as the favorites to win the division, and they're my choice to win the division. Lamar Jackson, if he stays healthy, and that's a huge if. I used to roll my eyes when analysts and pundits were talking about how Lamar Jackson's health concerns are a concern to the franchise, but given 2 seasons, including missing an action report in last year's wild card game, you have to consider Lamar Jackson's health as a huge factor for how they perform this season. If Lamar Jackson stays healthy, they win the division. Simple as that. If they don't, the Bengals might take it. But for my money, I'm putting the Ravens first, Steelers second, Bengals third, Browns fourth. And it's going to be a tight race. This AFC North division looks to be a very competent and very competitive division in 2023. Again, Lamar Jackson has to stay healthy. We'll see how he does. Moving on. You know what? I'm going to keep this last one. We're going to talk about the Ravens and Texans game and my predictions for the season as far as what their record's going to be and how they perform later on. I'll save that little sliver for the end of the show, so you have to stay tuned for that. But coming up next, we're going to have Mark Lane, who's the writer for USA Today via Texans Wire. He'll come on the show and talk all about the Houston Texans and what he believes will happen in Week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens. This is the Ravens Talk Podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk Podcast. And as I mentioned earlier, I have with us Mark Lane, who's a sports writer for USA Today via the Texans Wire. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Samuel. Good to be on with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on the show. Hey, football's back. A lot of fans have been restless. They've been waiting. Preseason, they got through it, and now it's time for some actual football action.
Yeah, the exhibition games are over, and now the monsters are real. So, yeah, for the Texans, I think that the fans have been looking forward to this moment, and we'll just have to see whether or not they're ready for the wake-up call.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, C.J. Stroud comes in, rookie QB, Bryce Young, also an option, but Texans had to take C.J. Stroud, and a lot of people think that C.J. Stroud is the better QB, more NFL ready. What are your thoughts on C.J. Stroud early on this season?
I think that they went about it the right way, having him go through the process of earning the starting job, and also not doing what a previous coaching staff did with the first round pick at quarterback at that time in 2017, where they actually had Tom Savage starting on opening day instead of the rookie quarterback who was going to be the face of the franchise. Like, what is wrong with you? At least this time around, D'Amico Ryans and staff recognize Stroud as the guy. So let's have this competition, but he's going to end up winning it. And I think that just between him and Davis Mills, it may be a little bit of a wash, starting out. But with Stroud, if he can continue to stay available and just get that experience, I think that the Texans ultimately, even by the end of the year, albeit their record may be junk by that point, but you may start to see by December him show you what he is as the franchise quarterback, as solving the starting quarterback conundrum for the personnel and scouting department. So I think that, it's going to be bumpy starting out. He's probably going to be as vulnerable as the GOAT in Jurassic Park and the T-Rex spin against the Ravens, with the injuries to Kenyon Green at left guard, center with Juice Scruggs, and then at right tackle with Titus Howard, who's recovering from that fractured left hand.
Right.
So you're going to have just this, lack of cohesion on the offensive line in the beginning, and that could fluster Stroud. And, like I said, he could just be, they could tee off on him, and he would have a very, welcoming to the NFL at M&T Bank Stadium. But even just within the 17-game season, let alone long-term, he really solves a lot of problems, and fun times are back on Kirby Drive once again.
Yeah, and let's pull back a little bit because you mentioned something that I definitely wanted to get into, and that's with the culture change of D'Amico Ryans coming in, a player who many fans know very well, especially if you are a fan of the AFC. I really like this guy as a coach. Do you think that he's changed the culture a little bit? I know the sample size is small, but based on what you said about the competition at quarterback and the ultimate inquisition of C.J. Stroud at quarterback, do you think the culture shock has hit the fans? Do you think the culture change is real, or do you think it's likely to be more of the same with the Houston Texans for a while?
No, I think the culture change is real. He's fomented competition at virtually every level of the roster. And he's kind of, one concern was that he was maybe overworking the guys a little bit in the off-season workouts, which I think comes with rookie coaches when they get a hold of their own program. For example, Nick Sirianni with the Eagles, that's what he talked about in his off-season workout press conference, OTA press conferences this year, was talking about how you don't want to overwork guys, how that's a kind of a mistake you make when you're starting out and you get your own team, is you just overwork guys. And I think part of that may be to set the new culture or whatever, but that's something that takes experience. And I think that, again, beyond the job training, albeit that Ryans was the reigning AP NFL assistant coach of the year for his stupendous work with the San Francisco 49ers. The reality is this is the first time that he's the man on the sidelines and he's in charge. And there are going to be things that he has to go through the trial and error in order to absorb that, because there's only so much information that you can get through enculturation, which is why they have Shane Day and Bill Lazor as the offensive assistants that are on the staff. But really, you just have to go through it. And that's why the Texans were willing to go with Ryans at this particular juncture, at 39 years old and, coming off of David Culley and Lovie Smith, is these are actual growing pains that can result in a true homegrown coach that turns around the culture, as opposed to wasting such experiences on, like I said, a guy like David Culley.
Right. Now, let's talk about a little bit about that fact, because you have guys like Lovie Smith that came in very seasoned coaches, and you come in with a guy who has been with the Houston Texans, so there's some familiarity there. What is the pulse of the fans like? Are the fans excited with him here, especially with the combination of C.J. Stroud, a rookie QB who many expect to be a pretty decent passer in the National Football League?
Yeah, they're excited. They're very excited. Like I said, fun times are back on Kirby Drive. They got a little disappointed in week 2 of the preseason when Miami came in and just dominated them. 28-3, and did so in a way that was reminiscent of last year, in that they could not stop the run. They gave up 170.2 rushing yards per game, most in the NFL. Gave up 4th most yards per carry at 5.4. And when you're not able to stop the run like that, it just means that teams can go where they want to get their yards. Like, they don't have to do anything. I'm sorry that you heard my thank you for the sandwich, sir. All right, thank you. I told them the 5.4 stat. They get it. Someone came in. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Huh?
No worries.
Okay, so they wanted me to use the 5.4. I guess I'll have to come back on Pi Day and do a 3.14 stat as well. But if you're able to just, I need my 4 yards. Well, there we go. You don't need really even a passing game at that point. And that, I think, is what this defense is going to do well. If this defense get in a position where they're able to send Jonathan Grenard, Jerry Hughes, Will Anderson, and just get after the quarterback, the defensive backs already know that they will get their chances. No need to take chances. They will get their opportunities. And I think the pass defense will really impress at some point in the season and make the declaration that the Texans are back.
Yeah, and the pass defense for the Texans was pretty phenomenal last year. I think they were top 11 or 12 in the league in pass defense, but the rush defense was a bit of a concern. I believe they allowed about 5.1 yards per carry. And then come the Ravens, who have been known to have a dominant run team. They have Lamar Jackson, who's a runner, J.K. Dobbins and company return. But it looks like there's a shift with the Ravens where they're going towards the pass with the addition of Odell Beckham and the drafting of Zay Flowers. Do you expect the Ravens to go back to running the football a little more, at least in the start of it, or are there inklings that the defense of the Texans is going to improve as a run defense, and the Ravens will have to pass it a little more to get the W?
I think the Ravens will try on the ground a little bit just to see if it's there, because, that run defense showed some vulnerability. Also, it's a new group, new coaching staff, really a new philosophy in terms of they want them to attack. Levy Smith had more of a read and react kind of approach with the defensive line. So it's really, your defensive line forms a bit of a cohesion somewhat similar to your offensive line. So if you can find weaknesses in that, like I said, get your yards, then that'll open up the pass. But I think if Baltimore just opened up and went straight with the pass, then you might be playing a little bit more of the Texans game, unless Houston's offense is sputtering and going nowhere, which could be the case, like I said, because of how porous the offensive line is at this point. So, but I would just stick with the run and test that first to see if Houston is truly patched that together.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Well, let's talk about predictions. I mean, we talked a lot about the Texans making those adjustments and bringing in a guy like DeMeco Ryans to shore up their run defense. Do you think it's enough? Do you think C.J. Stroud's addition is enough, accompanied with DeMeco Ryans' addition, to possibly upset the Baltimore Ravens?
No, not this. No, it's just this week because of what's going into this week that I say that. If I think the Texans by December are going to be a team no one wants to see on the schedule, where if you're a team that needs a win to stay in the wild card race and you've got the Texans, that's going to be kind of like your oh crap moment, because it's going to be too much of a battle that you're going into, that you're having at this point in the season, with a team that's got a terrible record en route to a fourth consecutive double-digit losing season, which, by the way, everybody's going to get those anymore with the 17th game.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes. But C.J. Stroud, he will become the first Texans rookie quarterback to make a start on opening day since David Carr in 2002, when they beat the Dallas Cowboys 19-10 in their first game ever. Also, M&T Bank Stadium, site of DeMeco Ryans' last game, with the Houston Texans, the 2011 AFC Divisional, site of his first game coaching the Texans. So a lot of interesting parallels for Houston going into this contest.
A lot of storylines. I didn't even realize that. You made an excellent point with D'Amico Ryans. Should be a fun one. Well, I appreciate you, Mark, for coming down. Very much obliged that you were able to join the show. Tell the people at home where they can find your stuff.
Yeah, they can find me at The Real Mark Lane on whatever the thing is now. I don't even know.
Twitter.
It's like Prince, It may as well just be a symbol. But and also TexansWire.usatoday.com, and go check out RavensWire.usatoday.com and the great work Glenn Irby does.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate you coming on the show, Mark. Look forward to having you on the show very soon.
All right. Thanks, Samuel.
Thanks. That's Mark Lane with USA Today via Texans Wire. He thinks the Texans might have something going for them, but in week one, he predicts that the Ravens are pretty much going to get the W. When we return, we'll talk more about what our predictions are for this game and the season moving forward on the Ravens Talk podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk podcast. Again, that was Mark Lane with the Texans Wire, joined us and talked all about the Houston Texans and what they needed to do to make a game of it against the Baltimore Ravens in week one. And, I kind of agree with them. I hate to say it, but, C.J. Stroud is a rookie QB. And the old saying, I think with the Patriots and the Ravens are the two teams that hear about it a lot. They do not let rookie QBs have their way, especially in week one. Your first ever game against those Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens who they, inside the locker room at least, believed that they were Super Bowl contenders. And you think you're going to come in there and get in the way of that team possibly making a run to the Super Bowl? Oh, it's going to be tough sledding. So my prediction for that game, I think it's going to be a slaughter. I think 41-17, and I'm being generous with that 17. I know the Ravens defense have a lot of question marks, but as he mentioned, that offensive line is going through it. There's some injuries there that the Ravens I'm sure will take advantage of, and we spoke about it. The Ravens are going to try and blitz early and often to kind of camouflage the depth concerns that are in the cornerback room, with Marlon Humphrey likely gone and Rocket Sim getting a start alongside, who knows, Darius Washington, J.A.D., Arthur Marlette, you name them. They're just bodies a little bit. I mean, I don't want to call them bodies because they made a 53-man roster, but as far as a Super Bowl talented, roster or room, not there yet, at least not early on. Maybe later on in the season they get their way. But, blitzing's going to be Mike McDonald's go-to. I'm sure of it. There's no way he's going to sit there and let C.J. Stroud figure out the game in week one. So I expect them to blitz early and often, and I expect them to dominate. I expect the Ravens to run the ball. I don't want them to run the ball because I've seen them run the ball for the last 5 years, but it's just a recipe for success. Run the ball. Let D'Amico Ryans and that defense prove to themselves and to you that they can stop the run. And if they can't, you keep running it. You run it until you can't run no more. Get J.K. Dobbins his carries, because J.K. Dobbins talked about it a lot last season about how he wasn't getting his carries to get the ball running. Handing the ball 50 times. Let them stop you, and then let the other guys show out. You got Odell Beckham Jr., who I'm sure is not going to be too happy about the game plan, but if he sees the film, he'll understand. Unless D'Amico Ryans does something to shore up their defense, I think Mark mentioned that Lovie Smith was more of a reacting coach as far as the defense was concerned. I definitely don't expect D'Amico to be that type of coach. They're going to attack. If they're successful, you might see some Zay Flowers action, some OBJ action, some Mark Andrews action, but I expect the basis, the foundation of the game plan in week one to be run the football, let them stop you. If they can't, good night. So my prediction is definitely a 41-17 victory by the Baltimore Ravens. But let's move forward. Let's look ahead. We talked about the Ravens possibly winning the division. I think the Steelers are going to be right there with them. Don't sleep on those Steelers. I'll say it again. And the Bengals are also in the mix. Obviously, I think they're going to be a great team. But I believe the Bengals have really benefited from Lamar Jackson's health. I mean, in both instances, in last year and the year before, the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens were leading the division prior to his injury, and the Bengals were able to just take advantage. Let's call it like we said. The Bengals took advantage, and good for them of a Lamar Jackson situation, him not being on the field. So as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy, I fully expect the Ravens to win the division. But what about the rest of the divisions? What about the conference? Do the Ravens make the Super Bowl? Is this the year? Is Lamar Jackson finally going to get his chance to hoist the Lombardi Trophy? Well, the AFC is dangerous. Let's just call it like we see it. I mean, I'm just naming off teams off the top of my head. The Chargers, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. We got the Bengals and Steelers we just talked about. All right, we can go even further and talk about other teams in the South. Well, not the South. Even though the Jacksonville Jaguars may cause some trouble, don't sleep on the Jaguars. But there are about 6 or 7 teams in the AFC, including the Chiefs, who I don't know if I mentioned them, but the Chiefs are, defending champions right there with them. These teams are loaded. Look at these quarterbacks: Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen with the Bills. Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. Kenny Pickett, I have him winning, the second or third spot in the AFC North, possibly a wild card team. And he's a wildly unknown guy. He's the only guy out that list that isn't proven. The AFC is going to be dangerous. So if I predict the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl, then the basis of that has to be on what I expect, what I've seen from the Ravens on the field, and I haven't seen it. So to sit here and say the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl would be ludicrous. But the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl this year. It's going to happen. The Ravens offense looks too good on paper. It will be a complete fail by Todd Monken to not use these guys to their advantage. Of course, I have to put an asterisk on this because if Lamar Jackson gets hurt, Josh Johnson and Tyler Huntley aren't going to be good enough to beat these guys I just mentioned. So a lot of it rests on Lamar Jackson's ability to stay healthy. And some people may say, well, Lamar Jackson, he's not going to be running the ball as much this year. So his chances of injury are reduced. But every time Lamar Jackson's got injured, it's been inside the pocket. And he's been running away from a pass rusher inside the pocket. It's not like he's getting hit on the 40-yard line by a Mike linebacker or a safety and just decleating him. No. These are fluke injuries that are happening, but these injuries are costing the Ravens championship opportunities. So when I say the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl, I have to put an asterisk on there because if Lamar Jackson's not healthy, it's not going to get done. But I think the Ravens get it done. I think this is the year. This is what I've been asking the Ravens to do for years. Give your quarterback, your gifted QB, weapons. Weapons. That's all he needs, weapons. If you have a Lamborghini and you just put him in the parking lot with no wheels, he's not going to go. If you put bicycle wheels on that Lamborghini, it's not going to drive no matter how great that engine is. Give this guy an opportunity to make plays. And Mark Clayton came on the show last week and talked about how he spread the ball at Louisville and really made an impact. Just spread those wide receivers out. Put Mark Andrews on one side, inside, next to the offensive lineman, and spread OBJ, Zay, Bateman, Nelson Aguilar. Even put J.K. Dobbins on the corner if you have to. Give Lamar Jackson a chance to survey the field. Let the defense defend the entirety of that football field, not just between the numbers, the entirety of the football field, and let him go to work. If the play's not there, Lamar Jackson has the legs to make anything happen. So Todd Monken has a huge task in his belt. He has an opportunity to really right a wrong with 4 years wasted of Lamar Jackson, I believe. Well, let's call it 3 because he did win the MVP in 2019. To really put this team on another level. You have the Kansas City Chiefs and you have the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills, their offense should be the blueprint. Josh Allen wasn't much of anything as a passer coming into the early years of his season, but they brought in Stephon Diggs. They changed the offense. It wasn't just him running anymore. The threat's still there. If Josh Allen sees the lane, if there's an opportunity to correct the wrong as far as offensive schematics are concerned, he's going to make that impact with his legs. But Josh Allen's slinging that thing to Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs. And now they have a tight end in Kincaid, a rookie, that's going to come in and make an impact too. So the Bills have the weapons. They know the blueprint to succeed, to catch up with those Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals to some extent. You got to throw the football. And you have the greatest runner, the greatest dual threat quarterback in the history of the game, and you're cutting the dual part. He's just a threat with his legs with that offense that you have under Greg Roman. So I very much think that with Todd Monken, he better Spread this offense out. Just use Louisville. Just contact Louisville. Hey, can I get your playbook real quick? Add a little sprinkle there, but do exactly what worked with Lamar Jackson. I believe Lamar Jackson even stated that there's some plays that he liked, some things that he saw during practice that he wanted to implement into game plans, into the playbook that Todd Monken took under consideration and actually implemented it. So I'm very excited for what we're going to see from this team. I think the Ravens are going to go to the Super Bowl. I think they're destined to win it if all things goes right. And then the third trophy comes into the Ravens facility. Owings Mills, the castle, has a new trophy to display, another ring, and the fans can go on Twitter and make fun of the other 31 teams for a few months before the 2024 season starts. That's how it is. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Ravens Talk Podcast. Like I said earlier, we're doing a giveaway on Friday. If you guys are listening to this show prior to, we're giving away 2 tickets to the Ravens Texans game that we just spoke about today. So details of that are on my Twitter, as well as YouTube and TikTok. So if you guys want those tickets, you guys know what to do. But that's it for us here. When we see you next time, we'll have football being played and we'll be able to talk about it. Hopefully for you guys, the Ravens pick up the W, but if not, we'll have lots to discuss as far as what our plans are for the Ravens moving forward. I appreciate you guys joining us. Enjoy the games this week. Gamble responsibly, of course, but enjoy those games. See you.